Hi there, I'm Elmarie Hyman, and I am in the Santa Clarita area. That's where I live. But basically, I've been homeschooling four kids, my four kids for the last, I always say 25 years because my oldest is 25, because I feel like you just start when they're born. You just don't stop. But I guess technically 20. So it's basically been like a change of like from going from just having a regular private school affidavit at in the first year to going to a PSP, which is like a private school umbrella type school, where we had some field trips in PE class and things like that, where we met some other kids. And then we eventually joined a charter school. At first, I thought that was too good to be true, and I kind of just thought the people didn't know what they were talking about, and they maybe misunderstood something, but then realized, oh, wait, I can actually do that. So I joined a charter school. We did that for 10 years. And then in high school, we did private school affidavit again. And so, as a result of like wanting to have a community for my own kids, we started co-ops. In my house, at first, I had a bunch of classes, and then we would travel around from house to house every week. We either some co-ops I hosted at my house every week, and my house was very clean because I had to clean it every week, which was to that. But then other times we went to other people's houses. So co-op was basically where everybody pitches in and do something. So they sometimes the thing you did was hosting, and then some other parents taught classes and stuff. So eventually people got kind of tired of that, like they were just kind of worn out. And they kind of said, okay, well, let's why don't we just have it all in one place. And so eventually Learn Beyond the Book was born out of all that stuff. And it's basically a learning center, a resource center with tons of community and a lot of social events and field trips and things like that. So, and we also do like similar meetings to this, or like information meetings. We just help parents that just learn what is homeschooling, how do you even do it, what are all the different approaches and stuff. So I have one again on next Saturday at 3:30. So if anybody wants to join that, let's just private message me and I will send you the link. But it's yeah, when if you want, I can also send you the link and you can post it wherever. That'll be helpful. But it's very informal, and also kind of like today, where you can ask a lot of questions and you get some questions answered, because when you're new, you have no clue where to even start. There's just like when we started, there was not much out there, and now there's almost too much. You don't know where to even begin. But I do always say this in every meeting that I do, is like your community is the thing you need. And if you don't have a support system of community around you, you and your kids both, all of you will just suffer because of it, because we're all social creatures. Even if you're an introvert and you don't really like to leave the house, you still need somebody you can call if you have a problem. you know and homeschooling isn't moonshine and roses every day. So there's going to be challenges, and you want to have somebody you can ask questions, or somebody that's a little more experienced. So it's really great to have a community, like with park days and field trips. And I mean, there's just tons of stuff which we'll talk about today in this meeting, where you can build community. And you'll have to find your tribe. I always say, like, not every group that you find is going to be the people that your family is going to really feel welcome necessarily, or feel like they're part of it. Some groups are more inclusive, some are more exclusive, some are more religious, some are not. It's just like, you know luckily a wide variety, so everybody can have something. So yeah, so thank you. Good.
That's great.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
You're
Let's go ahead and continue our introductions with Linda. Would you please introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Linda. I'm mom to three, a 23-year-old, 19-year-old, and 7-year-old, and all of them have homeschooled. The youngest was at public school for a few days before he decided he didn't want to do that. And the oldest have been in a homeschool, private school, homeschool again, and public school. So I am based in mainly in the Bay Area, in the woods, believe it or not, and in downtown Los Angeles. And so that's quite a big difference. And I've had a lot of experiences with different communities in both areas, as well as in Hawaii, which is where I started. I have a lot to say, so I won't start here, but I think I just want to riff off the importance of finding your homeschool community, because you're going to grow up with those folks. And so looking for a good fit is super important. And you don't have to settle. You'll know when you're with people that you vibe with, that connect with you, and that you build them up and they build you up, and you can be a resource to one another through thick and thin. And so that's what brought me to this panel, because I am passionate about this particular topic because I've had amazing community throughout my homeschool journey. And when I did not, it was extremely noticeable. And I was really lucky and glad that it was also easily corrected. I'll stop there.
Thank you, Linda. I can't wait to hear the rest of what you've got to share with us today. Let's go with Lisa. Would you please introduce yourself?
Yes, hi. I also have a lot to say, so I also will try to be brief by way of introduction. My name is Lisa Betzelekwa, and I have been in the homeschooling community for about 15 years. I started early on running, even before that, creating collaborative co-ops of all different types. I was a founder of the local attachment parenting group, which was a feeder to many of the homeschooling groups in our area. I live in the San Francisco Bay Area, and when I started homeschooling, I co-founded a local group that serves people homeschooling for academic and intellectual reasons whose kids were not getting their needs met in school. And so that group is always ranging between around 300 and 400 to 500 families. And one of the things that I will share, and will be the essence of what I say or what I have to offer here, is that not only is community important, but creating a community in which people feel empowered and encouraged and almost required to participate and also create their own offerings within the group is the way that the group becomes a larger version of itself, and it also becomes more self-perpetuating. So really empowering people to create mini groups within the group is really important. As far as our approaches, like most people who have been homeschooling for 15 years, the last 15 years have been rich ones in the homeschooling community. And I, by the way, say independent learning, not homeschooling, because like so many of, I'm sure the panelists will concur, most of us don't stay home and we're not trying to recreate school. So we're looking at a different way of educating. And so I use the word independent learning, homeschool only for short, so it's clear to other people. But we've travel schooled all through Greece, France, and Thailand. We've done early college, community concurrent, what's called concurrent community college. Both my kids have tried public school. My son has done an immersion program for 6 months in France, where he went to private school in France. And we've done it all. And so my kids are now last year of college and first year of high school. And I will leave it at that. Thank you for having me here.
Well, we are very, very lucky to have you. Last but not least, from our panelists, aside from myself and Wendy, would be Laurel. Would you please introduce yourself?
Of course. Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for being with us today. I am honored to be invited to be here. Wendy is one of my favorite people and such a hard worker for the greater homeschool community. And since we're talking about community, I guess the first thing I wanted to say is there are levels. There's like statewide community. And that's where we started. When my firstborn was 3 years old, we went to the California Homeschool Network Family Expo. And I remember being in a hula class with her and learning to do a dance. And the grandparents were there with us. And I looked around and I said, this is what I want. This is the people. This is my tribe. This is the idea. I want that sense of independent learning, as you say, Lisa. And I appreciate that so much. I try to go with alternative education, whatever, to indicate that we're not stuck at home. This is not denim jumpers and the kitchen table. You know, we are always out doing things and experiencing. So that greater community, and I know people where all of you live that we don't see very often. And my daughter, who's now 18, thinks of those kids that she grew up with as her weird cousins because she's always known them. We don't see them very often. It takes a reunion, like a statewide conference or a teen dance or something, to get together with them, because you don't just hop up to the Bay Area or Santa Clarita to see your friends. So that's sort of the larger umbrella community. And then on the smaller community, you need a consistent park day. For me, I think of it like church. I need to be out there, outdoors 1 day a week. We need to play. We need to see the sun. We need to see the trees. We need to see our friends. And that level of community is not necessarily consistent the entire journey of the 15 years. It's going to change with the age of your children. It's going to change with what you're doing, because we've all done all of the kinds of things there are to do. Maybe you're out of state, maybe you're out of country, maybe you're doing the charter or the PSB. It's going to be a different group of people. Sometimes you fall out. There is drama at that micro level. So those are things to just be aware that building community isn't something you do once. It's something you're always doing. And I have 3 kids. The eldest just graduated from high school and has been taking junior college for the last 3 years. The 14-year-old, we just got signed up for the junior college yesterday, so he's going into 9th grade and concurrent enrollment at the same time. And then I have a 10-year-old who's an avid baker, and that has been one of the few things that has worked well with lockdown, is we can bake a lot. Thank you for inviting me.
Yes, thank you for being here. And Wendy, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
I'm Wendy Eklund. I am a homeschool mom. I've been homeschooling through the charter school system for, well, I guess now it will be 12 years. And my oldest, we did pull him out mid-year this year to homeschool him privately through a PSA. He just needed more flexibility than I was finding available in the charter school. But my middle and my younger, they're both still with a charter school. I have volunteered and been involved in community all over our community. And I just felt like it was really important to share and inspire our new moms on how to build and find their community, because I feel like our generation of homeschoolers really set up so many things to help our families. And now this new generation, they might need new things, and we want to empower you to be able to build those things for yourselves or find the things that we've created that fit your needs. So that was really the reason I wanted to do this one. So Heather, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes. My name's Heather, obviously, and I got into the homeschooling world several years ago, primarily to help charter schools grow and to be more well-known within the community. And then I became eyes wide open with what homeschooling really is. And I was able to fight the stigma, and I found a lot of things were really going along with kind of what my beliefs were at home, that may have felt strange to some others. And then I made the choice to homeschool my oldest, because he was definitely not he was the square peg in the round hole at a public school. So it's been amazing, and I really love it. Wendy, you're muted.
Muted. I don't know who wants to start, but Linda, I know that you had a lot to share and created a slideshow. That do you want to start?
I could start. Elle Marie, did you have a constraint?
Yeah, but did we?
Yes, I have a meeting that I have to leave for in like 10 minutes, and then I might be able to come back right away, or depending on if the person, she never confirmed, so I'm not 100% sure.
Oh, well, actually, let's start with you, Elle Marie, because I feel like your story is really important to share. I think now that people are joining charter schools, they see that we have all of these vendors that we can choose from for our families. And a lot of those vendors were started by homeschool moms, homeschool dads, homeschool children after they've graduated. And Elle Marie is a homeschool mom who started an amazing learning center. So I'd love for you to be able to talk about that, Elle Marie.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I love it. I like I said earlier when we were just hanging out. I always call it my fifth child. I'm gonna share my screen for a second just so people could see the website. It's Learn Me on the Book. It's like like a homemade resource center. The website, everything's made by me because that's just how it is. That's when you start out just wanting to help, really wanting to help your own kids. That's really what it came down to. I had a very social child, and she was 10 years old, and I knew she was going to probably want to. My oldest was also very social and actually considered going to public school for a while because he wanted more friends, but then realized what that all entailed for him, and he was like, no, I don't really actually want to go. But I still felt like he could have done with a few more friends. He would have had a better time. So I thought, okay, I'm going to start now. And we've done so many like game nights and social events. Just like we have a whole page here for social events and field trips, which honestly right now is just so hard because there's no field trips we can actually do. But we've been doing social events. We've been like doing like virtual game times and teen game nights and things like that, which we always post on a meetup group that I have. I'm gonna stop sharing so you guys don't all have to see each other in this tiny little window. I always hate that when you share your screen. But basically, every second week we have like either a tween game night or a teen game night. We're gonna have this coming year. The plan is to have a group called Urban Explorers, where we're going to have every week a field trip. We're gonna start out with ones that are like outside. Hopefully we can social distance and have some stuff. We actually have something even coming up this week with someone called Tracker Rob that a lot of people know about him because he's a naturalist and he's just amazing. So he's doing some 3 beach walk and tide pools and things like that. So even amidst all this, like they're going to do all the safety things and go out and explore. But I feel like the community, as I said earlier, we started out not knowing about all the resources, and I'm always concerned and wish that homeschool parents would just automatically know everything, when they start out. I actually, for a while, had a blog on examiner.com when they were still like kind of reputable. And I was just like, I just want a place where I could just put everything that's happening in Santa Clarita all in one place so people can just find it right away, because it was so sad to me every time I would meet someone and they had no idea. And I remember how I felt so kind of lost. And so I started doing that. And then eventually when Learn Me on the Book started going, it just changed. And the classes that we offer are also very interactive and like really small. They're like 12 kids per class max. And so usually it's less than 12. And the kids really get to know each other and they see each other consistently every week. So if they don't, right now they don't see each other in person, but they do see each other on Zoom with a live teacher. And then there's just like topics from all the core classes and all the way through where we mix in like all kinds of things. Like you would have like math and art through stories or something. So you have math and art and literature all in one class. So that's kind of like the specialty in a way, because people like us don't just do one thing usually. Like we do have some classes that are just like math, based on the level that the kid is at, but a lot of classes are a mixture of different subjects, so that we can have kind of a little bit of everything, a kind of unit study type of approach, because kids retain it just so much better when it's like more things that are involved, and every person is a different kind of learner. So the classes have a lot of games in it, and then they have some worksheets and they have some projects, and it's just like a combination of trying to accommodate all the different kinds of homeschoolers so we can appreciate each other and include everybody, and everybody's encouraged and always like brought to the point where they really are encouraging to the other people in the class, because that is the hardest part, is when you have a kid that comes in and they've been like bullied in school, they're coming out, they're just like kind of really fragile in a way, and then if someone makes even the slightest comment, a lot of these kids are really sensitive. And so it's really good that there's like a system where we always work with them, even if they say something maybe slightly like well, you didn't know that? I'm like, oh, wow, there's a lot of things I don't know, let me tell you. Show me a video game, you think I'm the most uneducated person in the world. But, I know a lot of things about something else. So we always try to encourage them, like make a community out of the kids in the class so that they are like become friends. And if there's ever an issue, we resolve it by talking about it and like seeing the other person's perspective and all that stuff. So they're like emotional intelligence, all those things like getting worked into all the classes so that we don't end up with kids just brains, just know math, but not, forget about like caring about other people and the world around you. So if anybody has questions, feel free to email me anytime.
I'd like to also share how so many of your kids come back to you and end up teaching classes to the younger generation. And I just think that that's just
it's so awesome. Yeah. That makes me always so excited. Yeah. And my son he was the first one because he was like 16 and he started teaching a technology class when we first started out. And it was just like wildly popular because the kids were just like 4 years younger than him, but they learned so much from him. And then Mackenzie, who's been teaching, and then there's another kid. Yeah, it's so wonderful because you don't have to explain to them the philosophy; they already get it. Yeah, it's so awesome. Yeah, and that is the thing that I love is that the people are actually sad when classes are ending for the summer or something. They just want to have that community all the time, and so we try to keep it going over the summer, but it's of course not quite the same. Because they a lot of times pay with their funds, and so when the funds run out in the summer, they don't have a way to pay for a summer camp or something. But we try to keep the social stuff at least going so that they still have that community. But yeah, then they come, they return, semester after semester, which is great because then the community gets stronger and stronger, and new people get added and just attached to that group that already exists, which is great.
Right. And you have 2 locations, Elmer, before COVID? Did you have 2 or 3 locations?
Yeah, I had 3. I had one in Santa Clarita, which is the biggest one, and then there was one in Van Nuys area, so San Fernando Valley, and then in Antelope Valley in Lancaster, there's another one. At times there were different ones too, but we might in the fall, depending on what happens, have something in Agua Dulce at the iLead there for their home study program. So we'll see. Hopefully that can work out.
Yeah, so we're all waiting to see what we can do for fall, right?
I know. So right now everything's virtual, but in the Lancaster and Agua Dulce might be in person, hopefully.
Hopefully, yes.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. And I know Elmarie might have to hop off, and if she can come back, she'll join us again. But we will share links with everyone. I see that that's a question that's being posted on our Facebook. So we will share the links for what everyone talks about. So
just send my website link there. Okay, I'll see you guys in a little bit.
Thanks, Elmarie.
All right, I'm going to miss some. I'll see you soon.
Okay.
Bye.
All right, Linda, do you want to talk about your perspective on homeschool community?
Yeah, so here, I'll share screen, keep me on task here. So for me, it was interesting because I discovered that there was a lot of different things that I've been doing over the years, and we'll see how this works, over the years to build homeschool community. Everything from preschool co-ops to participating in park days to running field trips for other homeschoolers. And so let's see, how do I advance this? Okay, so I spoke about myself already. One thing I didn't mention is that I think it's really great that Laurel mentioned the state level as well as the local level, because I do serve at both levels. I'm a board member actually of Homeschool Association of California, which is one of the 3 statewide homeschool organizations. The other 2 are California Homeschool Network and Christian Home Educators Association. And so for me, I mentioned that for me, that there had been issues finding community at some point. So when my middle child was homeschooling for sophomore year of high school, we were searching for community. And actually, I'm going to blame you, Lisa, because the organization that she helps found, that's what she introduced me to them. And a lot of what I'm doing today is directly related to the mandate that group had. I won't steal your thunder, but broadly, to be participatory. And so when my youngest was demanding homeschool, I said, okay, what can I do, and with whom can I do it? Because I cannot do this alone. I was ready to launch my career or relaunch my career. I'd been keeping it on a simmer and doing some content generation, doing some nonprofit work. But now I was like, I gotta get these books written. I'm gonna go for a professorship, all these things. And so homeschooling was like, oh, okay. I've done this before, can't do it without community. And so the biggest thing for me was to keep putting myself out there, looking for community. And I have found it. I found it in a lot of different ways. And let me move this ahead if I can. And here are some of the ways that I did it. One was I started my own Park Day group, Snakes and Dragons, for kids who are about the same age as my son, plus or minus a couple years. And that was really cool. It was small and it kept going even when sometimes I could not show up to it. The other things we did within specifically Lisa's group, and this year I was supposed to be expanding it, but this year happened. And here, I don't know if you can see my cursor, here's my husband, homeschool dad, shout out. We started, so he and I met in college, and we're scientists and a lot of billion other things. We wanted, we lived in the woods. We spent a lot of time tromping around in the woods and tromping all over California and even the world. We wanted to raise up our kid with other kids who were interested in science and in nature specifically. And so this is our little crew of field naturalists at this is our third field trip out of 6. And they're learning here, I think, about a specific species that grows only on a certain type of soil. So this class right now, I'm in the process of virtualizing. Another thing we did was I have huge interest. The reason I went a professorship is because I have my professional work in renewable energy and electric vehicles. I am distilling a lot of what I know into things that can be part of engineering education. And so I've done a lot of work around curriculum development and course development and things like that. And I brought that back to our homeschool. So this class, actually, this series of field trips has really amazing educational resources behind it that then I took online. And in this case, I created a coronavirus series in late February, early March, to educate folks on Facebook and elsewhere, obviously, about coronavirus. But I also talk about a lot of other things. Our lens tends to be around, we build community around science, math love, and what's interesting to me is discovering that you can see my face. So there's actually a lens of bringing forward my Africanness as well as my American Blackness to the table, which, as you all know, has become something that's been of interest most recently. I mean, it's always been there in the homeschool communities I travel in. And so it's interesting to see that education piece. And so building small community around that. And then these geoboards here represent a park day that I'm a part of. and we do activities. It's a co-op and a park day. And what's been really exciting is to, the first time we showed up there was Easter 2019. And they just welcomed us with open arms. And I was like, oh my goodness, my people. There's all these activities. The kids were so welcoming. The adults there were so welcoming. There were dads there. That's something that's important personally to me, is to have like a full representation of society in the groups that I am a part of and I contribute to. So this was I call these math baths, where you basically just have a bunch of really visual mathematical tools and toys and games and activities that you can do to learn math. And so building community, here's a class we do and that you can see at the upcoming HSC conference on building, on making crystals in your kitchen. You got to understand why. Why do you want to build a community, right? As you've heard me say, all about the math love, all about the science love, all about diversity and inclusion. And those things I'm extremely passionate about, and I want to share those passions. And I've been very lucky that on the building community side, I've been able to find people who also want those same things. And I have to tell you, I have failed many, many times in that community building practice. You just have to keep trying, keep doing, keep engaging, keep showing up to your park day that you started. Keep putting out there those Facebook events for those teaching events that you are going to do, or for those co-op events. Just keep putting it out there. Keep showing up. Time, just like in entrepreneurship, spending time doing the work will repay you. So, and you'll learn so much. You'll learn so much from your failures.
So true. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, shout out for the HSC, just like Laurel mentioned with regard to the California Homeschool Network. These statewide conventions are so important. They are opportunities to meet with people across the state that maybe you don't see that often, but are still very important people to you. That's a valid way of holding relationship. This year we're going to be virtual. Right. Here are two keynote speakers, and they bring a focus on homeschooling and on learning that is diverse, that allows you to interrogate yourself. In fact, a lot of our our speakers, our keynote speakers, are really helping folks ground themselves in why are they homeschooling, and how do they overcome and address the experiences that they're having. So my PSA is called Forest Grove School, and almost all the things I do are under that heading. I'm starting a new community actually directly in response to the COVID crisis. And if you want access to it, that'll be happening in late July, early August. But the whole idea there is homeschooling in a pandemic is completely different from anything any of us have done before.
Right.
You know what? There's people who are homeschooling today because they don't have a choice, because remote learning isn't working for their families, things like that. And one of the things I do personally and professionally is help build islands of stability within a sea of uncertainty. And this new community, that's what that's meant to do around education at home, alternative education, homeschooling, etc. That Facebook page I mentioned, where I share free learning insights, activities, opportunities to learn around science, engineering, electronics, art, all sorts of different things. That's actually kindergarten through college age. So that coronavirus series had each day was a different group: early elementary, upper elementary, middle school, high school, college and graduate school level education. And then again, invite you to attend the Homeschool Association of California conference. It's a great way to have questions answered and learn about homeschool community.
Linda, can you remind us where the HSC conference is when it actually does happen in person? It's in...
Yeah, so for this year and next, it was meant to be, and last year is San Jose, California. The DoubleTree in San Jose, right off the VTA lines. But unfortunately,
right.
Well, we have an opportunity, is how I choose to see it. We have an opportunity to reach a lot of people by doing a virtual conference.
Yeah, you're going to be able to reach people from all over this way. So I do think it's nice that you guys have your conferences in separate locations. So HSC is in San Jose and CHN is in Southern California. It's in Anaheim when it's in person, right? That's right. And then I actually don't know where Chia's conference is when it's in person. Does anyone else know where it happens at? I'll have to look that up.
Yeah.
I don't know where it is now.
Right. Well, now it's online like everyone else, but yeah, we'll have to see. I don't know where it is. I'll have to look that up and share that. Thank you so much, Linda, for all that you do for community. Lisa, do you want to go next since your guys' communities are connected and have helped each other? Okay, thanks.
For sure. Well, that was an amazing presentation and so many good pieces of information there. And I think what I would leap off of what Linda shared, Linda, obviously, as you can tell, is amazing at creating community and at contributing to community. And because you referenced Linda coming from BAGS, coming from the Bay Area Gifted Homeschooling Group, and people loved those classes. You know, I heard so much about the classes, like mushroom classes and oh my God, like the field trips, and really incredible. And I guess what I would do is share my thinking around the larger topic of creating community. And that some of the things I think are most important. And the three top level things I think, let me back up a little bit and say that in our group, so many times when new people join, they will come into the conversation and say, I can't find anybody for my X age kid with X interests, with X challenges. And they don't know how to find the right people. They don't see exactly what they're looking for, or it's too far away. There's all the reasons that it's hard to connect, even though our group is very large, you know, relatively speaking, for a very specialized group within the Bay Area. It's hard to find the right people. And as Wendy said, that is just so important to find your tribe. So one of the things I communicate to anybody who says that is, if you build it, they will come. And that is one of the principles of our group, in addition to being a really effective strategy for finding the right people. So if you aren't finding the people who are the right age, with the right interests, with your probably fairly unusual kid, because most of our kids are fairly unusual, that's why we're homeschooling, then you have the opportunity to decide on the age group. If you want to create something, decide on the location, when we had location specific stuff happening. And you get to define the parameters. If your kid is interested in some obscure thing, or say like bird watching, say, you can find the kids who are 9 to 11 who live within 10 miles of you, who are interested in bird watching. And so if you can create it, then you have a lot greater chance of creating the kind of community that you are wanting for your family. So some of the things that I share with people on and this works on the community level. So this is very meta and also very micro. This is the principle on which we formed our group, which is the larger, but within which there are many groups. And so the principles apply in both cases. And so the first thing is to think, what is the group for? Who is it serving? And to really be clear about whether the group is for particular age or particular location, or maybe like religious or not religious, or so who exactly the group is for. So in the case of our group, I'll just use as an example, it's for people who are homeschooling, and we've had to define that over the years many different times because it's changed, but people who are specifically homeschooling, they have to be homeschooling, and they have to be raising kids who they are comfortable with the idea of giftedness. For all its flawedness, there are very specific challenges to raising gifted kids. what we call kids that are often asynchronous in their learning. It's just kind of a filter that we say, this is our community or people who are dealing with this particular challenge, opportunity. And they have to live within a radius of the Bay Area, within, I forget the number, but there's a number of miles within the Bay Area. And that's really powerful because it helps people know, have a very beginning level filter of to whether this group is going to serve them and whether they're going to be able to contribute to it. So who is it for? Then the next thing is how is it run, right? And so that question is, this group is not a consensus-based, in our case, it's not a consensus-based group. Everybody doesn't get to put their vote. We don't do democracy. It's run by a benevolent leadership team that does our best to serve the needs of the group, and that's really clear up front so that people know, okay, this is what they're coming into. And then we have expectations, and this comes from the idea of organizational development stuff, which is what is the culture of the group, what's the feeling of the group, what are the expectations of the group, and how do you participate in the group. So we make it very, very clear to everyone who's considering joining us that if you're going to join, you're expected to participate in some way, that we want you to have a culture and a thinking about contribution, and that you're going to take it on, that you're going to bring something of your gifts and talents to the table to share with the community. And then beyond that, we need to keep communicating that over and over again. So that's a message that comes down. And again, this is an organizational development concept, right? That the leadership has to consistently be reiterating the values of the group. And so that people know, hey, so that you start to have your members sharing the same information. You start to have the members saying, hey, contribute. Hey, if you want something to happen, just why don't you make it? Here's what I did. And so what that's resulted in for our group, obviously challenges, because there's always challenges, because you can't have that number of people together and have everyone be happy at any given time. But generally, it's created a culture of a lot of contribution, a lot of collaboration, and a lot of community building from within, as well as our best attempt at creating a positive environment with no flaming and, trying to keep things. So anyway, I think that's the top level thing that I would want to share as someone who's been involved in creating a lot of different communities, is that there are structures and processes. Oh, and the other thing is that whenever you're creating an event, that you make it really clear what the rules of engagement for that event are. So all those things that I just shared, who's it for, how they can expect it to be managed and to run, like what can they expect to happen, and what are they expected to contribute. Those things can be translated to any level. If it's a park day, same thing. If it's a class you're organizing, same thing. And so to keep on putting the message out to any new homeschoolers, look for those kind of groups that are run in a way that is consistent with what you're doing, and start out by organizing something that's going to meet your needs, because you'll be meeting the need of someone else in your community.
Right.
So.
Yeah. When you're looking to fill that need for your own children, that's where so many of our things were born out of. I think that's really important. Thank you for sharing all that. Great tips.
Sure.
Laurel.
Hey, so my goodness, I just can't even tell you how thankful I am to hear your words, Lisa and Linda. I've been writing and writing because there are so many changes in our community and our experience as homeschoolers in the last 10 years, 5 years, 1 year. It's amazing. So some of the things that are on my mind to share are when people come to us as looking into homeschooling and they have that wild-eyed look, I need answers now. And they are asking the question, what curriculum? And we are giving them the answer, community. And so it's kind of funny that we are taking sort of the universal question of how do I, and giving them an answer that they don't really understand. They don't really know how or why you would do that. And many of them in the last little while have been, with the growth of the charter schools, the public school charters, they will come and say, why do I need that thing you're telling me about? Because I have a structure. And we say, because the charter school does not equal community. It doesn't equal what your heart needs. It doesn't equal what your kids need to grow and flourish. It may handle reading and writing and arithmetic, but it's not going to fill those other niches. And so one of the first things I feel that we need to help new homeschoolers understand is whenever they come to the realization that they are going to need those aspects filled, they are going to need those aspects filled. So here's how. Welcome to our park day. You will find me at this park at this time every week, unless something happens. And then we can talk about it. And you can see other homeschoolers and how they behave and how they interact. And that one of the great beauties of this is that all ages get along. Everybody says, I have a 10-year-old, so I need 10-year-old friends. And that isn't necessarily true once you've been in this community for a while. Your 10-year-old may have a 4-year-old friend that is amazing and that they love to share with and learn from. They may have a 16-year-old friend that is amazing and they love to share with and learn from. So people's expectations about what their needs are and what it turns out we have found that those could be are very different. One of the things that I thought coming into this community from the natural childbirth community, the attachment parenting community, the breastfeeding community, I thought that co-ops would be such a natural thing to happen, so easy. And I have spent a lot of time really considering what are the barriers to those things naturally occurring. And I just want to tell the people out there that are trying to build community, it's not your fault and it's not a problem if community is hard to find, because temperament, schedule, geography, age of children, all of those things are not necessarily on your side. So keep trying, keep going, go to everything that you can and meet everybody you can. Networking is huge. And if something doesn't work this time, maybe it'll work next week. You really do just have to keep working on it. And then those things will last. Another thing that I was thinking about is how we all have been talking about the statewide community and that many times things start there. In the last 10 years, maybe 12, there used to be a much greater importance on regional community. We had a COC Park Day, which was the Central Orange County Park Day, and people would come from counties away to go to that park day. And they would have holiday celebrations that were enormous with hundreds of people, blankets as far as the eye could see of homeschoolers coming together. And those were organized on the Yahoo groups, which are no more. Nobody's using those. Social media.
I was thinking about those, Laurel. That's so funny. The Yahoo groups.
The Yahoo groups, they were how we started, and communication was so laborious. One of you said, we had a piece of paper, a flyer that said, so technology has changed the way we communicate and interact so much. And that's a beautiful thing because people don't have to go to the once a month park day 2 counties over. They can create community for themselves. And so, you may have people come to your park day and it grows and it gets enormous and thriving, but then it starts dwindling down, not because of lack of interest, but because of empowerment. Because suddenly those people find, I can create this 5 minutes from my home instead of an hour from my home. And that's a beautiful thing. Social media has really allowed people to connect successfully and make things work for them so it's easier. And then maybe you still check in, like you go to the annual convention gathering, you'll check in with your regional group, but it really has given people a lot of control over how and when and whom they spend their time, because driving is a big aspect of this. We all know we live in large cities and counties and traffic and the time it takes to get somewhere, and you're already driving to classes 3 nights a week or 3 days a week and then park day too. It can be really hard to get around to get all those places you need to be. So making it easier on yourself as you, the new homeschool participant, is okay. That's all right. Once you find out what that community participation feels like and how satisfying it is, make it your own. You don't need to have somebody else create it for you all the time. Make it work for you. Also, I wanted to touch on, Lisa said, the idea of independent learning, alternative education, school choice. All of these are encompassed in homeschooling. And homeschooling, like I just said, is a lot of driving. It isn't necessarily at home. It's where we find it. And so I have the phrase that I use as shorthand with my friends who've been doing this for a long time, cultural homeschoolers. We believe that this is a way of life. It's not the curriculum you use, it's not the resources, it's not whether you choose to PSA or PSP or independent study through your local district. It is the way you live your life. And you may flow easily and naturally through all of those. Learning center, co-op, whatever it is, travel schooling. You can't do it all at once. But when your heart is leading you to live a learning lifestyle every day, to raise your children knowing that they are loved, that they are safe, that they are welcome to explore, that's really what's important. And so that's what's on my mind.
I think that was beautifully said, Laurel. I think, Lisa, you said the same thing. I think that it's kind of important to touch on, like you said, the Yahoo groups. We used to have the Yahoo groups, and I think they actually served a really good purpose. I know they were a pain, but I get a lot of feedback from families who, like phone calls, who aren't on Facebook. They don't want to be on social media, or they were on Facebook and they left because of whatever reason. And so I think that it's important to know that a lot of our websites, like Learn Beyond the Book, Homeschool Concierge, HSC, CHN, they all also have lists of park days and lists of different information where you can actually just go out in the community, meet people in person, and then try and build your community. Because if you're not on our social media accounts, it is hard probably to connect to people. I think all of us on here are on social media, so we have that way to advertise and say, this is what I'm doing, and join us if you're interested. Does anyone else have any other advice on how people that don't want to be on social media can meet other homeschool families? Lisa? Or join social media with a fake name, people. No.
Well, I think meetup.com has a lot. I mean, if you don't want to be on social media, you could do something like meetup.com. There's a lot of groups there.
Yeah, there are a lot of meetup, yeah.
Yeah, they're growing. There's also some of the groups that are probably going to take to homeschooling a lot would be MOPS or Moms Club groups. And they're nonprofits. MOPS is more of a religious group, but Moms Club is not. I would say that they probably have homeschooling chapters that are pretty good resources that are not on social media. So,
right.
I mean, honestly, our group is still run on Google Groups, and
there you go.
Yeah, and at one point we talked about going to Facebook, and even though I'm a huge Facebook person and really into social media, and I can't even really conceive of, that was my facial expression, how you can actually connect without being on some form of social media with your tribe. Like, this is the opportunity, is to connect more broadly with people outside of your neighborhood. So it's hard for me to conceive of it. Yet we did not go to Facebook and I actually was one of the people sort of fighting against going to Facebook because I didn't want us to splinter.
Right.
And so that's why we're still on, thank goodness we're on Google Groups and not Yahoo, presence of my co-founder at the time. But yeah, so I think there are groups that are also run outside of social media, but you might have to find them through social media.
Right.
Or through friends that are.
Right. But I think, again, our homeschool associations are a great resource to reach out to. They all have like helplines that you can call or email if you can't get connected through social media. So I wanted to share that too. Linda, did you have more advice?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think they all have county contacts or 800 numbers that you can call and get connected. Just go to the websites. Also, I know I was in 2 Yahoo groups. Okay, I joined them last year.
Oh, really?
2. I had to create a new Yahoo account. I joined them last year. They've both kind of moved. One's half moved to Facebook. The other one's in Facebook. And I will say that the only way I was able to find groups, because I wasn't looking on the, I was not hip to the idea that I could call the statewide homeschool groups, first of all. So you guys do that, because I know some people who do create a Facebook account just to connect for homeschooling purposes.
Right.
And so what I did was I just asked. I just kept asking. on Facebook. It's like, where can I go to find community? Where can I go? And I just got deluged. Everybody, the homeschool community on Facebook has a lot of knowledge. I am not advocating, I'm not advocating that people jump into Facebook, but just be aware that it's there. And if you do have a Facebook account, that it's a resource for you. But definitely your statewide organizations, and that's not just in California, right? That's speaking nationally. I think it's a basic thing. When you're issued your homeschool organization briefcase or whatever, or a swagger wagon, you are given, have contact information on a helpline so people know how to find each other. And that, I think that's not just in the US as well.
Right. No, yeah.
The other thing that I would share is that that there are a number of people, especially now, there's so many of us now that have been homeschooling for such a long time that, I don't know, maybe all of you, but certainly many people who are doing consulting, just as to share their knowledge on an individual basis with people individually based on their circumstances. So I think if people find someone who is a consultant in their local area and maybe just does one session with them, they're going to be able to get a lot of resources that are local. That person that's doing the consulting is going to certainly know of all the opportunities in their area.
Yeah, that's great. I've been seeing a lot more of our parents launching those kind of local support groups and local support businesses. So I think that's the other thing I really wanted to instill in everyone that's watching and everyone that's wondering how to build community is that you can do it. We never thought that when we started homeschooling that we would be building co-ops and that we would be building businesses and that we would be building programs and that we would be leading field trips. And we did it. We did it for our kids and we did it for those other parents that we love and for those for the community as a whole. So I think that that's really important. Just know that you can do it. It's amazing the things you can do when you have to. Laurel, I wanted to ask you about, like, most of the support I offer to families, they're somehow given my email or my phone number, or they find me on Facebook. And so I personally am all about helping individuals. So I love to sit on the phone with you and talk to you and hear your story and help you find something that's going to work for your family specifically. I don't really ever have events in person, with large groups, but I know you have done that and that you're good at that. And maybe Linda and Lisa, you have too. Can you kind of share how people can connect on a larger scale? What do we have going on in our community right now besides these kinds of panels where people can come together and get information?
Well, yeah, that's a great question. And with the pandemic, in-person connection is really off the table, which is such a bummer because that's how we like to do things. Right. I am a local contact for California Homeschool Network, so I think I've been on their phone line for 8 or 10 years now. So that's one of the things. Facebook, and I totally get it. Can be a very frustrating structure to be a part of, but I run Homeschooling OC, which has several thousand members. And it's a free-form community that is all about parent-to-parent support and offering resources. So we have a Park Day list. And, people come on and they say, like I said, what curriculum should I, ... And we say Park Day, and here's the list. And, find one, go to all of them. You can go in this county, you can go to a Park Day, at least one every day of the week, sometimes more than one if you wanted to. So, and then people are always branching off and going, well, I'd really rather have one in my neighborhood. So they build that. That's awesome. We also do annual events. Unfortunately, we've had a water park event that we've done since 2012. And an annual, people would really come from counties away to get together and do this, because when you go to the water park and everybody that floats by, that's really super fun.
Right.
You go to the pumpkin patch and go, oh my gosh, I haven't seen you for a year. That's super fun. Unfortunately, all of those things are off the table. Our water park that we do our events at has just done this big expansion, and I called them in spring and they go, yeah, and you can see it in 2021 because nobody's coming this year. Yeah, so that's
like the homeschool Park Day, or I'm sorry to cut you off. I was going to say that's like the homeschool day at Disneyland that we all are going to really miss.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
That was a huge day. That got hundreds at least.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I think in terms of COVID, that homeschoolers are suffering just as much as anybody else. At the very early days of COVID, people were coming to homeschoolers and say, "Oh my gosh, tell me what to do." And so we all tried to rise up and say, "Well, here's and a lot of the underlying mentality of don't panic, let your kids be free, use it as an opportunity to explore new possibilities, blah blah, all that stuff." And then the reality is that homeschoolers are suffering from being in a situation they don't know how to respond to just as much as anybody else.
Right.
We might be a little more familiar with a little more time at home, but I think we're facing so many of the same overlapped challenges.
Right.
Yeah.
True.
Well, I was going to touch on that for just one second, just because I do have kids that are in public school and I have kids that I homeschool. To see the difference is really extreme. And I think this is branching maybe a little bit off of community, but the distance learning in public school is very much so surrounded by being in front of a computer. But when you homeschool, I think homeschoolers, and this is what I've learned to really appreciate, you are out and you're looking for these learning experiences. And so I'll go to, a local nature center where I live and turn that into this huge subject matter that's going to cover almost everything, as opposed to sitting in front of the computer for 3 hours trying to get the lessons done in a day. And it's so frustrating. So that to me is totally where homeschoolers are missing out, because, I would say the large majority of homeschoolers are looking for that hands-on walk around nature type of experience. And Linda, you touched on that too, but it's just, it's really something that we're missing out on.
Yeah, I think so too. I keep being asked like, well, how's the COVID lockdown treating you? And I'm like, well, we both worked from home and we homeschooled. So it's not terrible being at home, but we used to field trip 2 or 3 days a week. There's things that we used to do to get out of the house, take classes. The kids were doing dance classes and then they wanted to move the dance classes to Zoom, and that was of no interest to my children. Other kids loved it, and I think that's great. We should have all those options, but my kids were not they're not going to clean an area in the living room where they can have room to dance. They'd rather have their toys everywhere. So, you just have to find what works for you, and sometimes you have to create what works for you. But yeah, we're not in a normal circumstance right now.
Yeah, I think for me, understanding. So I teach a class every week for early readers, and my son was doing OutSchool. It was inspired from a class he did in OutSchool in January, and I was like, "This is so much fun." He refuses to Zoom. And
Right.
I know there's a ton of kids right now who refuse to Zoom. He was in this really amazing camp this week. He went to the first day, which shocked me at all, but didn't go any other days. And so our responses have to take that into account, right? As homeschoolers, we get that our kids have rights and that they have autonomy. They're their own people who have input into what and how they learn. It's a spectrum. We're very unschooly at my house. And I think that if we look at Zooming as the only option, then we're doing ourselves and our young learners real disservice. And so, in as much as we can talk to one another and figure out, and this again is a community piece, what kind of creative ideas can we come up with to address the learning needs and the activity needs and the intellectual curiosity needs of ourselves and young people in our lives, right? And so, this is something I'm super interested in, especially since we do spend a lot of time outdoors and now we can't. We still have some time, but it's nothing like it was before. So how do you bring that forward to today and into the future for however long this is going to go on, right?
Right.
And I think community, a lot of homeschool groups, I've seen a lot of things happening there. I've been part of adult book clubs for homeschool parents. I've been part of, I'm part of a group that has like Discord servers and Minecraft servers and things like that. Lots of different ways for us ourselves as adults and our young people to interact. So that needs to, I think that really needs to keep happening, those creative experiments.
Right. Yeah, I agree. Heather, are you noticing any other questions? I think
no, we don't have a ton coming in the questions from the chat. We did have a parent say that she uses or she connects in a group that's email based as well. So I asked her how she got started with that, so we could share that. But other than that, everybody's just loving that the things that we're talking about. Anne Ryan did mention on Facebook that or in Facebook that Facebook is a bit overwhelming sometimes for new families, which I tend to really agree with. So yeah, it can be very overwhelming because you would think that there's like a group in each area, but that's not true.
No. Yeah. I think finding that one group that you can like connect with and be a part of, and don't branch out into other groups. Don't be parts of millions of groups. But last night I was looking at all of my groups. I literally could not scroll to the end of them, you guys. Like they just kept going. And I was like, how did I even get in so many groups? But there's different ones for different things. So I think, who has a good list of the Facebook groups on their website that's not on Facebook? Nobody?
I thought you would have it because you're posting to all of them all the time.
I know.
I have it in my head. This is what I'm saying. Like, this is why I have to do everything individually. If you have a problem, please just call me because I'll fix it for you. But it's all in my head.
Well, and I think it would be really hard to start a list of Facebook groups just because there's so, like, daily there's new ones starting and then closing down. And it's, I mean, it would be a list that would grow so much. And Diane Smith said that Chia just was a great way for her to get started 28 years ago.
Right.
Yeah.
That's again going back to those homeschool associations in California. I think that is a great place to start because they do have all those local contacts, and I think that's a good place to start. I wanted to talk briefly about, well, it's not going to work for people right now. I wanted to talk briefly about how you start and run a co-op, because that was a big question prior to COVID. And I love co-oping. So Laurel's kids and my kids, we did a co-op for a while and we had the best time. So who else has done co-ops? Lisa, how did you get yours started? How did you find families that were interested? How did you decide who was going to do what? How did you do it?
So I've done two. The first one was preschool related, and it was young kids, like when my first child was 3 to 5 or so. And that was the basis of it was we had one paid caregiver, and we alternated between the homes of the people, and the caregiver was responsible for coming up with learning opportunities, and the parent was responsible for bringing the food for that day and helping. And we had a very complex spreadsheet, and you had to basically participate, pay the caregiver, and contribute hours based on how many hours you used. That was the launching point and the idea for when I got involved in another co-op that was formed actually through my attachment parenting group before we started homeschooling, but it was a learning co-op, and it was structured in a similar way. So it was through the attachment parenting group. I would say 90% of the families in that group went on to be in our homeschool group. So most people homeschooled. And we did the same thing with that. We hired one caregiver that we shared. Of course, the content was more involved and it was a different age range, but we based the same premise. And again, it goes back to the idea of really clear expectations, really clear understanding of who it's for, a really clear understanding of what you need to contribute. And so it was very clear. If you use this many hours, you contribute this much money for the caregiver. And here's how we make our decisions. We have a meeting once a month. They're sometimes a little painful, but that's part of it.
Right.
But I think, again, it's the same thing about understanding who it's for, creating structures for how it's run, and then really creating a community that's all on board for that. And it was really an amazing way to do it. I highly recommend learning co-ops. Learning co-ops are fantastic, not only for building relationships between the kids, but also for building what I think is one of the most beautiful things about homeschooling is that you get to have relationships with other people's kids and they get to have relationships with other people's parents, such that, as I'm sure is true with all of you who've been doing this for a long time, I have a number of bonus kids. Like I think of them like my kids because I was really involved in their education largely because of the co-op situation where it might have just been the caregiver, like the teacher, caregiver, and me with all the kids, 25% of the time. And so I think that's a really lifelong gift that it gives. And
Sorry, Lisa. Can you talk to me a little bit about how you were able to find a caregiver? The co-ops I did, I love teaching. So I just would do the teaching, or I would team with other moms and we would trade off on the teaching. So I love this idea because right now we have families that are looking at, oh, I don't actually want to send my kids back to school even after COVID, but I work. So how do you find someone to be that caregiver and rotate?
So I have an overarching learning from that experience too that's specific and also generalizable. And that is when I first started looking for a caregiver before this time, the person who was our primary person in that second co-op was initially started with me. And the way that I found her was I was looking for someone to help me because I had a 6-year age gap between my kids. And I put a general ad out on Craigslist. And this could apply to anywhere, but it happened to be Craigslist. And I got, I need someone to help me, like very, non-specific. I got 40 responses. And they were overwhelming and none of them were very right. And then I said, okay, this is not the way to do it. Then I wrote a really specific email. And I said everything about the way we run our life, that we're homeschoolers, that we're looking for someone who named all the qualities of what I was looking for, what the job was going to look like, really, really specific about what I was going to work for me and what wasn't going to work for me. And I got one response.
Wow. Okay.
And that woman, Christina, worked for me for a couple of years, and then she became the primary caregiver for the co-op. Okay. So I would say the same thing applies, that if you know what you're looking for, whether you're looking on Craigslist, and I think Craigslist is still a reasonable place to look. There's also care.com. That's a place that you can join for membership for 3 months. Talking to your network. Anything I need, I go to Facebook.
Right.
I just do. I put it out to Facebook. But the thing that I would say, not so much as the location of where you look, but the specificity. Right. The more specific you can be, the more likely you'll have to do less work vetting, and the more likely you'll attract the right person.
Find the right person, right. Did anyone else have anything to share about co-oping? No.
I'm back.
Yay!
So now I might be saying something that you guys already said. I wrote a tiny little booklet one time about the challenges that co-ops sometimes have, as wonderful as they are. There are some challenges because most of the time people who homeschool, we all have our own opinions, that's why we homeschool. So it's not always an easy, no drama situation. And so I was basically in that little booklet I mentioned, a lot of the time the people that you start the co-op with are all your friends. And then you end up having your friends technically in a way being your colleagues in a way, because now they're teaching your kids and maybe you don't like how they're teaching your kids. So I would just be mindful of, like, when you starting a co-op, it's a little bit like a marriage where you have to really know really get to know the people and kind of see their conflict resolution skills maybe, and kind of, I don't know, like figure out if you're going to be able to get through a conflict and still get out alive on the other end and not be enemies, because you don't want to lose your friends.
No.
So that's like one challenge that I would say, that it's just to keep an eye out, because you get so excited when you find people that think like you. You're just like, oh, let's do something together. This is amazing. And then, over time you're like, oh, okay, I didn't see that coming. Yeah, so that's this one little thing. And also kind of like, if you want your kids to be, have this other person in their life as a teacher or a mentor, you want to make sure that their personality is something you would want in your kids' lives. Like, we had one person, she could teach pretty much anything, but she was not very caring. And so it was a little bit like, I was like, oh, I don't really want my kids in a class with her, And so if it's a co-op where you can pick which classes you take, that's easier. Then you just don't sign up for that specific class. But if it's something where everybody does math and then everybody's going to go do English and then, they're all doing it the whole day, then you might want to decide to change, what you're doing.
Right.
Things that just keep your antennas out.
Right. Yeah, there are some really large co-op groups in California that
Yes.
meet. I was never part of a large group. Ours were always small co-ops with just maybe, I think the most families we ever had was maybe 10. So not huge.
Yeah.
Did we have any more questions, Heather, that you noticed? Oh, did we lose Heather? I think we lost Heather.
She seems to just be muted. But
Oh,
maybe-
really?
I mean, she has like a screen off, but there she is.
Oh, there she is.
Sorry.
Oh, no, you're fine. I just was worried I lost you. Did you notice any other questions? No pressure.
Yes.
If you can't.
Well, so Diane Smith was saying that, back to co-ops just really quickly, she had just posted that hers organically grew with multifamily, and she loved it. And then Francisco on Facebook, how much do you pay the teacher of the co-op? What's the going rate?
Lisa, that would be you.
We paid her a comparable rate for who she was at the time, which was a 25-year-old young woman who had some experience with learning, who was really loving. And I can't remember the exact amount, but it was, you have to give them a competitive rate. And I think obviously it depends on their experience. I think we paid her something like $20 an hour at the time. And that was maybe 10, 15 years ago.
Right. A while ago. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a while ago. But I just compare. It has to be competitive. You ideally want to find someone good and keep them.
And you're splitting the cost between multiple families, so don't be cheap. No.
Yes.
I think that's exactly it. Is it worked out to, I think what we ended up paying on average was somewhere around $4 an hour each.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Just so reasonable.
When I hire just teachers for Loan Me on the Book, I always say I want it to be a win-win for everybody, not just me, not just the parents, but also the teacher. Like, everybody needs to be happy. So I usually ask them what their rate is, and then depending on what they say, then adjust, or we can discuss and, come to a compromise of some sort if we need to.
Yeah.
I agree.
And I guess you could say too, teachers that are working for charter schools, you can find this as public information, but I think more or less depending on how long their contract is or something, if you went this route to get somebody that's used to working with homeschoolers, they're about like $50,000 to $60,000 a year. If you wanted to see if you could work with a credentialed teacher that already works with a homeschool outside of a charter school. Anyways, that would be maybe high, but an idea.
Right.
I don't have any more questions or comments as of right now on Facebook though, for co-op.
Well, then I think we're done and everyone can enjoy their weekend. Thank you so much for being with us and sharing this information for families. Anyone else?
Yes.
Thank you for having us. It was awesome.
It was great being here. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. And I wanted to say thank you, Wendy, you are an organizer that does so much. Linda, Lisa, Elle Marie, what a wonderful opportunity it's been to hear your wisdom and hear your stories. And Heather, I've worked with you through our charter school, and thank you so much. And just to remember that at all levels in these communities, there are people helping. Like on our Facebook group, I don't answer all the questions. Lots of people are answering questions. When somebody's been here for a year, then they go, I can help that person. And they jump in, and you see this organic growth of communities online and offline all the time. And that's a beautiful thing. And our kids see that, and they see that it starts from us because somebody helped us. And then they can be kind to the next child that shows up at Park Day and say, hey, welcome, let me introduce you around. My kids know, hey, it's welcome wagon time. We've got a new friend here. We've got to get them in and let them feel that they are completely welcome, that they are completely safe here. And that's really what this community is about, I really think. And so I thank you all so much, what beautiful women you are, and how much I appreciate you.
Thank you, Laurel. You too. And I agree with you 100%. Our community is full of thousands of beautiful parents who just want to support each other.
Yeah. Oh, I would say something too, and I hope this isn't like strange, but I know that we do have so many new homeschoolers coming into the community because it's extremely fresh and because of COVID. And I think that it is truly amazing, but just remember that some people have this stigma or they have this idea, and I was one of them, of what homeschooling was or is. And I would definitely try to fight against that if you have that, because homeschooling and the people in the community truly are beautiful people. And they may have different thoughts from people who use public schools. And there's nothing wrong with that either. But I would just say, just fight that stigma, that idea that you may have, and open your hearts to homeschoolers, because I've learned so much. And it's just amazing. So yeah, learned so much. I can't even say it.
Well, and I was just commenting yesterday in a group about, I can't think of another community in all of California that's as diverse as we are. Like, we're not all going to agree about everything ever, because we are like all over the place. But yet we are the first to come together to support each other and to help each other and to defend each other. Even if we don't necessarily use that method or agree with it, we're still going to defend you because we feel like it's your right to have those beliefs or that way of life. So that's why I think that's one of the reasons I'm so devoted to our community, because I love who we are.
Yeah.
With all of my heart.
I love how this is a great way of a nice way of closure, is to just really have this celebration. And I want to just add on to, especially Laurel, what you said, and Laurel's perspective of that this community really is a collective of people who are really committed to being generous with each other.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I would add on to that is an unusual experience for people who are not used to the homeschooling community is, and if you're coming from a more mainstream experience of learning or life, is that it's an extremely accepting, and it's sort of related to what Wendy is saying. Not only are we diverse, but people do not make cliques mostly or judge people for being different. There's an incredible amount of acceptance and welcoming to the odd, to the eclectic, to the different, to in any way that makes you different or unique. And I think that's very special and creates a lot of freedom and, and a positive experience for people. It's a really safe foundation to be in.
Yes.
I agree.
Nice.
Lisa, you're wearing your heart necklace, and I feel like homeschoolers, traditional or typical homeschoolers, they wear their hearts right here for everybody to see. So your necklace is so perfect for this panel, for this discussion.
Yeah, this is, I'll just say really quickly, this is by a woman named Lisa Ruff. She makes them and she contributes money from the sale of them to the school in Haiti that she has for kids. It's called
Collective.
Gosh. Yeah.
I need that. I want that. It's so pretty.
We'll have to share the link, Lisa.
Yeah, pop that link in the chat, please.
Yeah. Well, thank you all so much. Have a wonderful rest of your weekend.
Thank you.
We shall, you as well. Happy homeschooling, everybody.
Yes.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.